I want to continue with our next speaker, who is Richard Ells. Richard is the founder and CEO of Electroneum, and he will be talking about whether crypto adoption drives the market or the market drives the crypto adoption. Very much looking forward to his insight. Richard, welcome, and the stage is yours.
Hi everybody, welcome to the ANON Summit, the first virtual summit that I've ever done, and probably the first virtual crypto summit that most of you have done as well. It's a pleasure to be here in my own house in these strange times. I hope that you and your families, in fact, are all well and safe as we go about this strange COVID problem that the world is facing. Now, my speech here today is entitled, Does the Market Drive Adoption, or Does Adoption Drive the Market? So to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Richard Ells. I am the founder of a cryptocurrency called Electroneum. You may or may not see me touting it in my own background. But what my background is I've always been in technology. I've got a digital agency that's still running that I started 23 years ago with a business partner, way back when in 1996. That's still running and going very well indeed. I have another project as well that is a social media management platform for large brands. It's used by some really big corporate brands around the world. And that's going strong as well. So I've got a big background in technology, and I had a huge development team at my disposal, or who are also good friends of mine. And we were all kind of looking at crypto back in the day. So this would have been back, well, my first experience of looking at Bitcoin certainly was through a blog that I read from time to time called Zero Hedge. If you haven't looked at it, check it out. But Zero Hedge had started talking about Bitcoin in 2013. And I started looking at it. It was probably $20 or $30 to buy Bitcoin back then. And of course, as the price of Bitcoin went up, I started thinking, oh, I wish I'd have been involved in that. But eventually I bought my first Bitcoin end of 2014, beginning of 2015, and paid the princely sum of around $300 per Bitcoin. I seem to remember paying £200 in Bitcoin at the time. So that was my first time that I dived into cryptocurrency. And that got me into this world of back then, even more than it is now, highly technical world of cryptocurrency. So I started building mining rigs. I had GPU cards laying all over the place, and I had these mining rigs that I'd literally knocked up out of bits of aluminium and GPU cards hanging on aluminium frames. Much to my wife's dismay, I might add, all over the house. And I was mining Ethereum. And Ethereum had only just ICO'd, and we were playing around with all sorts of mining. It was highly technical. All of the wallets were Linux applications that you compiled yourself from source code. So my understanding, and everybody's understanding back then, was that cryptocurrency was a very technical thing. Now that's starting to become less and less, but my vision was, if cryptocurrency, which is a beautiful thing, if you look at the concept of what it is, it's a beautiful thing, it's freedom for people. If you looked at cryptocurrency, if you could just make it easy and accessible, then everybody would use it. Now, that's how Electroneum was born, the concept of it. I had a team of coders that were app developers, and we thought, you know what, let's make a cryptocurrency that just runs on smartphones. You don't need any skills at all to get involved. And of course, that's what we've done. We had this huge inflationary phase where we've just pushed out ETN in a massive way to get it to the market. And you'll understand why I'm putting Electroneum into this speech in a moment, because I've got some insights into the market that most people, 99.9999% of people in crypto, don't have. So what we did is we got a massive amount of users, 2.4 million app installs, and hundreds of thousands of people using Electroneum. Now, I'll come on to that in a moment, but it's important because it's given us an insight. And when we have a look at that title of the document, which I'm finally getting around to starting, what drives adoption? So does the market drive adoption, or does adoption drive the market? So if we have to think about it, first of all, is what on earth is the market and what is adoption? So first of all, when we think, a lot of people still consider that market participation is adoption. And perhaps in some ways that's right, but that's certainly not how I see it. Let me give an analogy. If you imagine the cryptocurrency markets are sort of a little like the equities markets. Now, I think my lawyers will literally melt down at me saying that, but this is the reality of how people use them. They are largely speculative, much like the equities markets. You can buy in, you can sell out with fiat, much like the equities markets, and there's volatility like equities markets. So, before I go on, I might just say, the usual disclaimer applies to this video. This is not investment advice. Please don't treat it as such. This is just my opinion piece on adoption and the markets. So, if we look at that and say, okay, so in equity terms, if you had, let's say, an airline. So if we pick British Airways, people could buy some shares in British Airways, and they could sell some shares, and they could speculate on those shares, but they wouldn't necessarily have to ever fly on the aeroplane. So that is fundamentally different to what we've got going on in cryptocurrency. So at the moment, largely, cryptocurrency is consumed by the same people and used within that same group. It's the cryptocurrency enthusiast group that is largely using cryptocurrency. Now, if I explain what I mean by that, if you imagine most things, the people that develop the technology very rarely are the biggest users. Most people would make a very smart app, but the very smart app makers are not the people that are using it. It's designed for someone else. It's designed for people to order a cab or whatever. So we are in this thing. It's a growing community, but it is largely driven by the crypto community. Now, when you take a look outside of crypto, that airline, that or whatever company it would be, it needs to have users. It needs to have people who run it. It needs to have people who drive it. It needs to have people who consume it or make use of it. If you imagine you had 50 airplanes sitting on the tarmac, but you didn't have any pilots and you didn't have any customers, or you've just described 50% of the top 100 projects in the coin market cap list. Investopedia did a piece where they said that 50% of the top 100 cryptocurrencies have no utility and no users. So it's a sort of a shocking thing to see. Now that is the market. This is very much the market. Now that doesn't mean that they're not exceedingly well traded and exceedingly well speculated upon. They absolutely are. So, but there's this strange sort of dichotomy between the use of the product and its market. So this is where I see this differing between market and adoption. So what we've got is, if you take a look at, let's have a look at the market being speculative and adoption being someone making use of it. Now I use Bitcoin all the time because I'm right into this market, and Bitcoin has a fantastic piece of utility, which is it enables you to move value around the world quickly, easily, and seamlessly. Now, I've used banks to try and move money around the world. Some of the deals that we've done have needed fiat moved around the world, and it is a nightmare. It's really hard to move fiat from the UK, for instance, or through to African countries or Southeast Asian countries. It's very difficult to do it, and it takes a long time. It might take days and days to arrive. It's frustrating. And phone calls, why hasn't it arrived yet? Oh, we're still waiting. Bitcoin, it's in. It's really easy. It might take 40 minutes before the confirmations have come in and they consider it to be disposable, but they can see it immediately. It's on its way. Now, this is a fundamental change, and that's why crypto is going to take off. But it's the utility that gets it to be used. Now, there are tons and tons of projects out there that maybe they have some imaginary utility that could be used, but at what point does it become utility? It's if you invent something that doesn't get used, I'm not so sure that it's got a utility until somebody goes, it's useful. So from Electroneum's point of view, we knew we had to catch up with some of these projects that were out there that were way ahead of us in terms of time, which is why we had to pump out ETN to a large number of people to get adoption. 3.8 million registered users, 2.4 million app installs. Now, that's come to an end, actually. It's come to an end this weekend. Our ETN reward system has just been shut off because we're getting into the next phase, which is why I have this insight into market and adoption. So what's been really interesting is that Electroneum deals with largely the unbanked. We're trying to solve a problem which cryptocurrency is literally the most beautiful solution to. And the problem is that a huge volume of the world's people are either underbanked or unbanked. They don't have access to banking. And even if they did, that doesn't magically make them part of the global financial community. So let me explain what I mean by that. Often in these countries, you will find that banking costs money. It doesn't sort of free service. You don't have a free bank account. It's costing you money every month to own it. Now, if you are only earning $80 a month in whatever the local currency is, but if you're earning $80 a month, you don't want to part with any of that to pay the bank. And even if you did, what good would it do you? So this is the critical part. So if you had a bank account, and remember that that bank account might well give you access then into having perhaps an exchange account and being able to buy Bitcoin. But if you haven't got a bank account, you probably can't buy any other cryptocurrencies. So Electroneum came along because we thought, you know what? We see these people. We think that there's a solution. Cryptocurrency is the solution for this international transfer, because where the bank falls down as well is even if they have a bank account, if you had $3 and you found somebody who could do some work for you, really, really low cost, in Nigeria, in Indonesia, and you thought, brilliant, I want to send them $3. It's laughable. It's going to cost you $30 to send the $3 to Indonesia, and it's going to take days to get there. So you've got to build up this relationship and spend $33 to get $3 worth of work. Now, cryptocurrency gets rid of that. You've got almost free transfer. It's very, very, very tiny amounts. You know, it might be a fraction of a cent to transfer that sort of amount of value. So you're not sending money, you're sending cryptocurrency. So the cryptocurrency, on the other end, has to have some value. Now, with the Bitcoins of the world, the value is absolute. We know it because Bitcoin is very well established in having a value. It's volatile, but it has a value. So with Electroneum, we had to make sure we got value on the ground. And I promise I am getting to the point. But what we did is we tied up with mobile operators. 140 countries are covered, hundreds of mobile operators enabling us to allow top-up of airtime for ETN directly from our app. So if you have ETN, you do know that it has a value. And that value is ascribed to it because you can purchase something that you are familiar with. Now, this is where I get to the market and adoption. What we've seen, we've had more than 100,000 top-ups of airtime with ETN directly from our app. And what we have seen is that there is a tally between market price of ETN and the amount of people topping up at that point. So that volatility that's taking place. So even though these people are miles away from crypto exchanges and perhaps diving into cryptocurrency per se, they are super, super aware of the market. So they see that their $1 that they've earned, so they might have earned, so we've got a facility to enable people to earn cryptocurrency through something called AnyTask, which I might plug at the end. But they've earned some cryptocurrency, or they were rewarded some cryptocurrency, so they have it, they have ETN, but they don't necessarily spend it. Now, you will all be familiar with this. Hodling. If you're not familiar with the phrase hodling, you definitely need to Google it. Hodling is holding. People in cryptocurrency like to hold onto it. Now, there's a good reason for that. If you look back in history to somebody who I metaphorically take my hat off to, the chap that started adoption of Bitcoin went off and bought a pizza, or maybe two pizzas, but he bought some pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin. And I salute him because he genuinely took something and turned it from conceptual into actual. He made it into a real thing with utility. So he swapped his value for something in the real world. Now, for those of you who followed that, the 10,000 Bitcoin is worth now, what, $100 million? So those pizzas cost $100 million in today's Bitcoin terms. And people are fairly familiar with this. So the phrase hodl came up, or hold. It was actually on Bitcoin Talk, which is a forum all of the people used to be on who were mining, probably still going strong. But somebody just said in a drunken rant, you must hold. And he didn't say hold, he typed it wrong and he said hodl. And then everybody started taking the mickey out of him a little bit, saying, what is hodl? How do I hodl? I want to hodl. And this has become part of cryptocurrency law, this concept of holding. Now, if you imagine that sort of goes against the grain of adoption. So that it might bring market participants, but are they adopting it to use? If everybody holds and nobody uses, then you haven't really got something that's going on. You've got the empty aircraft, you've got the no passengers, no pilots. People are just holding. Now, there's this sort of strange issue going on with regards to that. But the reason is because the people that are largely the cryptocurrency community at the moment are the wealthy global north, who have chosen to become market participants speculatively, mostly, not everybody, but a lot. And because of that, they are hoping for gain. And so they speculate and they hold. So that means that you have not got the traction in the adoption side as much as we would like to see. Now, if we take that and have a look at market participants and think, well, how do you make them use it? Well, they should be using it because they believe in it. But remember that what they've got a choice of is so many convenient ways to pay. So in my pocket, I've got Apple Pay, I've got Visa cards, I've got debit cards and MasterCards, and I've got PayPal, and I've got all sorts of ways to pay digitally that came before cryptocurrency. And they're convenient. But just as importantly, not only are they convenient, but they also spend my horrible fiat that I'm not so keen on. And why am I not keen on it? Well, look at the world. The world literally is printing money like we've never done before. And, I understand why we're doing it, because, we're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic that we're trying to economically survive. But do I agree with it? I don't know, because when you think about what has happened to other economies that have printed with wild abandon, you have not seen wonderful outcomes from those. I'm not going to name and shame those countries. Some of them are still in the midst of it. Some of them are historic. But you know what comes of it. You know what comes of printing. You will devalue the underlying fiat currencies, so your US dollar, your pound, etc., your euro. So I have a choice. I've got in my pocket, I could spend some Bitcoin or I could spend some pounds. Now I know that quantitative easing and by any other name the same things are going on. So I think I'd rather spend my pounds and speculate on the Bitcoin. So that's me personally. Like I say, it's not investment advice, but what you will see across the community is the same thing. And we are seeing it in Electroneum, even though the people have probably not earned that Electroneum speculatively. They've done it as a supplement to their income, meager income, I might say. So, what does this tell us? It means that the market participants are always savvy about the market. So we do know that there's a joining between adoption and the market. And we've certainly learned some things that even if you didn't join the market speculatively, you didn't go to a bank and send some money to an exchange, convert it into a speculative asset. So you didn't do that. You just ended up with some. You ended up with some by being rewarded by it, by taking it from someone. So we've had 270,000 plus app-to-app transfers. So this is one person with the Electroneum wallet and another person, scan a QR code, it goes bloop, and you have this instant payment technology that we've built, gives them an instant payment notification, and so they can walk up to a street vendor, bloop, and walk away. Now, that's taking place. 270,000 plus of those have taken place. So people are ending up with ETN, And it is out there in the real world, but they haven't necessarily done it to speculate. They're just doing it because it's a new way to transfer value between people. But what's interesting is that they've got this eye on the market. Our app converts between whatever their local currency is, be it US dollar or GBP or more likely Rand or something else. But it will tell them what the ETN is worth today in their wallet, and they can see it changing with the volatility of the markets. So we've learned a lot from this. But what we've learned probably above everything else is that if we have cryptocurrency as the best possible vehicle for global remittance, and it's a brilliant, genius method for moving value between people in the developing world who don't have Apple Pay, they don't have Visa and MasterCard, they don't have any of those digital payment techniques, then suddenly cryptocurrency is the answer for those people. So Electroneum has embraced regulation. I mean, I'm a libertarian. I believe in people's financial liberty, and I love projects like Bitcoin in an unregulated market. We've chosen to go down the regulated path because we want to take away the fear that corporates have of cryptocurrency. There's still quite a lot of fear, and there's a lot of government fear. Mostly government fear in the markets that we're talking to is about flight of capital. They worry that they have quite tight capital controls on their economy, and they fear that cryptocurrency will enable people to push value out of their country. But of course, Electroneum is we're totally KYC, AML based, and what we're all about is driving new money from the global north down into the global south. We're trying to bring money into an economy. But what you'll find is this is, yet again, I get back to my point about adoption of market. So we're talking about corporates adopting crypto. Now, everybody in the crypto market talks about adoption as if adoption is people joining the market. So we've seen the furore with JP Morgan in and out. Are we in? Are we out? Is everybody in JP Morgan going to get fired if they touch crypto, or are they going to deal with it as a company? We've seen Fidelity enter the crypto market. We've seen pension companies, with everyone saying if pension companies get into crypto, if they adopt crypto is going to go crazy what they talk about. But again, they're talking speculatively. They're not necessarily talking about adoption. So if somebody says, if the pension companies adopt cryptocurrency, let's use Bitcoin as the example, but if pension companies adopt Bitcoin, it's going to go crazy. But what do they mean by adopt? I think they mean join the market. Now, pension companies, certainly in my opinion, would be crazy not to have a small percentage of their investment in Bitcoin. To me, it boggles my mind that they haven't been able to achieve that. But remember that being in the market isn't necessarily adopting. I would rather see a pension company accept Bitcoin for the premiums. That's adoption. I would like to see a pension company give the option of being paid out in Bitcoin. That's adoption. So what this whole speech is about is to get into people's heads that actually the market and adoption are two separate things at the moment. And we're starting to see perhaps these parallel lines start to conjoin. And that's where we need cryptocurrency to be adopted. Now, we believe strongly at Electroneum that adoption is going to come from the global south. As much as the global north are the ones pushing it and the ones making that market. So they are creating a market. And remember that the market leads to value, and cryptocurrency doesn't exist unless it has value. So I'm certainly not saying one works without the other, but there's this symbiosis, a symbiotic relationship between market and adoption that doesn't necessarily work like anything else. You can have a market without adoption. You can have adoption without the market. It's very weird. But the adoption without the market is problematic. At the moment, the market without adoption is less problematic, but certainly mysterious. If you imagine the huge market capitalizations of those projects that genuinely have no users, and picture an airline with empty aircraft, a company would soon disappear if it had no customers. And yet projects are up there being traded that have no users whatsoever. Very interesting. So certainly a strange time. But the global south is where I believe that we're going to see mass adoption, which is the sort of phrase that gets used all the time in crypto. Loads of people say we're going to bring about mass adoption. It's a phrase that we've used ourselves. We are very much passionate about creating that. But we've been on a journey. We've been on a journey that has enabled us to learn an awful lot. Some people would say we have created mass adoption. You know, we have 3.8 million registered users. You know, I want to see 38 million registered users. We see 100,000 top-ups, which is a lot of top-ups in cryptocurrency. We see 270 plus thousand app-to-app transfers, but I want to see that as 2.7 million. I want to see a million top-ups. And we will see all those things as we move forwards. But it's interesting, is it not, that those people that can actually use something for a benefit are also seeing the speculative side. So both of these things are going to conjoin. We are going to get the market and adoption to join together. I don't think they've joined together yet. I think that they are still a bit disparate, but it's starting to happen. And what you will see is that the projects that are out there that have got real world utility and are genuinely driving value and are genuinely creating a benefit for someone, they are going to be the projects that last and stand the test of time. So decades, you know, not 6 months or 18 months, but decades. They are going to be the brands that move forwards and really change the world. And we're still at the earliest stages of crypto, even though it might be 10 years old. We are at the earliest stages. I can remember looking at the mobile phone market in 1989 when I just thought this market is completely saturated. I had an opportunity to get involved in a project and I said, no, this market is saturated. It can't go any further. And how wrong I was back then. And it's what actually made me realise that mistake that I'd made, which was an investment opportunity that I had, made me realise don't underestimate the ability for things to change. And when I saw crypto come along, I thought this is the future, and it still is. We will see massive adoption of this technology. And at the moment, it is in the very embryonic stages. So whilst there are a lot of people saying, oh, Bitcoin, the bubble has burst. I mean, Lord, how many times have I heard that over the years? When I bought at $300 odd, I genuinely thought, I think I bought at the top here. Everybody talks about the tulip mania of whatever it was, 1637, 1640, where there was this crazy speculation over tulip bulbs. And they went to the moon, as the crypto community would say. Tulips to the moon. So what happened is eventually people realised that you could get more tulips and actually they became back to the same value that they always had. There was this crazy speculative rush on them. And then loads of people have told me this over the years, that Bitcoin is dead. It's had its time and the bubble has burst, or the bubble is about to burst. It's constant. But then it finds a new wave and does grow out further. And we do get more market participation and we do get more adoption. Bitcoin's got good adoption. Please don't think that I'm saying Bitcoin hasn't got good adoption. It has. There's loads of projects that haven't, but Bitcoin genuinely does. So is Ethereum. So those projects that gain adoption are the ones to watch, in my opinion. And when we see that tulip mania, the bubbles, etc., and you think across the products that are in the market, I don't think some of them are even tulips. At least a tulip you could plant and have something at the end of it. I don't think a lot of the projects in the top 100 even have the tulip bulb. So there are some fairly dodgy projects out there, I think. But all in all, I think the conclusion that I will draw for does the market drive adoption or does adoption drive the market is that neither of those drive each other, but the market certainly exists and creates participation. So it is a light amount of adoption, but it takes a long time. You've seen where Bitcoin hasn't got a driving force, it just exists as a wonderful, unregulated freedom product. And I love Bitcoin, so please don't ever think that this is a negative thing about it. It so isn't. But it takes time for it to be embraced and adopted because there's nobody out there making it happen. And because it's unregulated, it's something that the governments of the world and corporates of the world have got to get used to, which they will. So the market hasn't created mass adoption. And that's, in my opinion, all because everybody is up here in the wealth area already. Once this goes out and it becomes really embraceable in the global south where people can really embrace it, then you will see massive adoption. And then, ironically, I think that the adoption will drive the market. So at the moment, I think we probably have started with market driving a little adoption. And now what we're going to do is we're going to see that spin right round on its head, and we're going to see massive adoption drive the markets. So I don't have a straight answer. I've got a topsy-turvy answer, but I did have an awful lot of insight that I wanted to share with you about this market and adoption thing. So I hope it's been of interest to you. Certainly, before I leave, I should just say, for cryptocurrency enthusiasts, of which there are hundreds of people watching this, I would think. So please, please, please take the time to go and have a look at anytask.com. It's the product that we've built that's powered by ETN. And the people that are on there that have listed tasks, there are more than 3,000 tasks listed on that platform. The products that are listed, the services that are listed, are digital tasks like logo design, banner design, animated explainer videos, video editing, sound production, just so many digital tasks, data mining. If you go on there, you can buy with your Visa card and MasterCard. Up in the global north where all this wealth is, you've got all that horrible fiat money you might as well be getting rid of. So go on to AnyTask, and please, you're completely safe, by the way. You've got complete guarantee. It's got an escrow system, so the person will do the work for you and you will be pleased. Otherwise, you'll get your fiat money back. So please go to anytask.com. Take a look and get involved, because you are then directly involved with creating true cryptocurrency adoption. Because the people that earn that ETN at the other end, because it's powered by ETN, remember that we can remit that $3 round to Indonesia really easily in ETN. It's not $3, it's $3 of value. And when they've got that $3 of value, they can top up their phone, they can top up their friend's phone, their family's phone, they can turn it back into their local value, whatever their fiat currency is, or favours, or work, or something else. So we've created this ecosystem. Please get involved in it. Go and have a look at Electroneum by all means, but please get involved in AnyTask and buy something. Honestly, you won't believe what you can buy on there. Some of the things are so ridiculously cheap. We have, we're going to shake up that marketplace as well, the freelancer marketplace, by opening up this global south market to the global north. So we've got all this fiat. We don't want it. Go and have a look. Go to anytask.com and buy some tasks from some of the poorest people in the world that have incredible skill. Thank you very much for your time listening to me waffle on about adoption and the market. I hope you gained something from it. I certainly have. I've gained cold feet standing on my tiled floor. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very